Hello, second grade, and welcome to Unit 4, Week 5. We're at the very end of Unit 4 right now. We're going to get started with our vocabulary. Now, before I do that, I do want to tell you that this week's work is going to focus on poetry. So you're going to see some poetry words. A lot of our reading is going to be poetry related. So our first vocabulary word is the word pale. Something that's pale is a very light color. So if you're talking about something that is a pale pink, that means it's a really, really light pink, or a pale blue is a really light colored blue, kind of like the color of the highlight over here on the title. So our example sentence is, Sam enjoyed looking at the pale yellow flowers. That means light, very, very light yellow. Your next word is the word drops. Drops are a very small amount of liquid that fall in kind of a round shape. So if you think of raindrops when it's raining, they drop kind of in nice little circular round shapes. Next, we have the word outdoors. Outdoors is something that's outside. So you're not in a building, you're not under a shelter, you're outside, outdoors. Our next word is the word excite. When you excite someone, you make them very eager, very happy. That's where the word excited comes from. Now, I threw some of our poetry words over here in our vocabulary section because you will see them in the vocabulary section of your selection test. So we have the word stanza. A stanza is a group of lines in a poem. It's like a paragraph. And a poem can have multiple stanzas, not just one. And it's the way that those lines are divided, right? So it's split into groups. So a stanza is a group of lines. And usually you'll see a space between them when you go to the next stanza. Repetition just means something is repeating over and over again. You're hearing the same words or the same sounds over and over again. And it's usually to emphasize something or to make you pay attention to something, to show you something is important. Another important word you need to know is the word alliteration. Alliteration is when you're repeating a specific sound, not a specific letter, but a specific sound. So if I say, Sarah saw some seashells, I'm repeating that sound. If I say, Carl creates colorful kites carefully. So you can see that I'm saying the k sound over and over again, but it's not necessarily with a C or just with a K, but I use both. So alliteration is repeating that first sound as opposed to rhyming. When we're talking about rhyming, we're talking about repeating the last sound in a word. Alliteration is when you're repeating the beginning sound of a word. Next, we have theme. Now, when we're talking about a poem and we're talking about the theme, we're trying to find the message that the poet or the author of that poem is trying to share with us. So what do they want us to learn or to pay attention to? So sometimes the theme might be, keep trying and you'll succeed, or always do the right thing, or be honest. It's the message, or like the moral of a story. This is the theme that's in a poem. Now, there's two kinds of poems that we're going to take a look at. We have free verse poems. So free verse poems don't need to rhyme. They don't need to follow a pattern. They're free. They're free to do whatever they want. Narrative poems are a different kind of poem that share the author or the writer's feelings, right? They're sharing something personal about themselves. So you can tell how the author feels and thinks when you read those. Now, for our language arts, for our spelling words this week, we're going to focus on more R-controlled vowels that sound like air. So you're spelling it either A-R-E, A-I-R, E-A-R, or E-R-E. And another interesting fact that I want you guys to pay attention to is that when we have an R-controlled vowel, it always stays in the same syllable. So the vowel and that R, they don't get separated. So if we have the word haircut, hair stays together and then cut is separated. Or farmer, the AR in far and the ER in stay together in their same syllables. Corner, turkey, certain, and so on and so on. So you can see that those are controlled vowels, and I'm going to highlight them for you right now so you can see them as we go along. You can see that they stay in their same syllable. They don't get separated from each other because they're making a new singular sound. They're saying R or So those ones aren't going to be separated from each other. So your spelling words this week are the words dare, stare, fair, hair, pair, chair, bear, pair, where, there, dear, cheers, new, never, and talk. Now the word fair over here for number 3, F-A-R-E, is not the same as F-A-I-R when something is either fair or it's unfair. It's not like going to the fair like a carnival. F-A-R-E means like what you're paying, like if you're paying a fare to get on a bus. So it's the amount of money that you have to pay, or a fare to get on a boat, or on any kind of transportation. You're paying a fare, F-A-R-E. So that's something for you to pay attention to. Now for our ELA notes, since we already covered the poetry words earlier with our vocabulary, we have a smaller ELA notes section this week, so that your main focus is going to be on contractions. Now contractions are when we're combining two words to make one smaller word. And in order for us to do this, we have to take out some of the letters. Usually we're just taking letters out of that second word, and the first word usually stays the same. Now to take the place of those letters, those missing letters now, we put in their place something we call an apostrophe. So an apostrophe looks like a comma, but it doesn't sit on the line, it sits above. So it's going to sit near the top of the letters. And we know that it takes the place of something. It has a meaning. So if I'm making contractions with the words not, now a lot of these you already know, you use them and you say them and you read them all the time. But now we're going to read the rule or learn the rules on how to make them. So you guys know what the word don't means. Don't means do not, or wouldn't means would not, isn't is not, shouldn't is should not. Now the way that you do that, when you're combining a word plus not, you're going to take that O out of the word not, and you're going to replace that O with an apostrophe. So it's going to be N apostrophe T. So do not becomes do, and then N apostrophe T to represent not. So do not becomes don't. Would not, you see we still have the word would, W-O-U-L-D, is still there, it's still whole. And then not is shortened to N apostrophe T. Same rule for is not. Is still there, the whole word is, and then N apostrophe T is added to the end. And then should not, same thing. You see all of the word should right there, and then we have N apostrophe T. So not, when you're adding not to the end of a word, you turn that not into an N, you take out the O and you substitute or you replace that O with an apostrophe, and you keep the letter T. Next, we have words where we're adding will to them. So instead of saying he will go to the park, I can say he'll go to the park. Instead of saying they will clean the classroom, I can say they'll clean the classroom. Instead of saying we will play outside, I'll say we'll play outside. Instead of saying she will read that book, I can say she'll read that book. So when I'm adding will to a word, I'm going to replace that WI in will. I'm going to take out the WI and I'm going to put an apostrophe in their place. I'm going to keep the LL. So he plus will becomes he'll. So he stays the same. You can see it right there. And then we have the apostrophe LL to take the place of the entire word will. Same thing with she'll. She stays the same. We add apostrophe LL on the end. They stays the same. Apostrophe LL on the end becomes they'll. We stays the same. And then we add the apostrophe LL on the end to make it we'll. And I bolded all of these for you so you can see what those abbreviations are, so you can do them quickly. Now, if I'm adding is, like he is or she is, so I would say he's going to the park or she's going to the bookstore. Instead of writing is, I pull out that I take out that I and I replace it with an apostrophe. So it becomes apostrophe S instead of IS. So he stays the same right here. The whole word stays, and then apostrophe S is added to the end of it. She stays the same right here, and then apostrophe S is added to the end of it. So he's or she's. Now, when we're adding are to a word, instead of saying they are or we are or you are, we say they're or we're or you're. And so in order to add the word are, we're going to drop that letter A and we're going to replace it with an apostrophe. So it's going to, instead of being A-R-E, it's going to become apostrophe R-E. So they plus are, I have they is still all there. That entire word is still there. And then we added apostrophe RE onto the end. Becomes, instead of saying they are, we say they're. Instead of saying we are, we keep the we all together, and we add apostrophe RE on the end of it for are. So we are going to the amusement park. For you are, we have the word you, all of it. Then we have apostrophe RE added to the end of it, becomes your. Now for the word would, so if I say she would, or they would, or he would, or I would, instead of saying I would like to go to the park, I could say I'd like to go to the park, or she'd like to play that game, or they'd like to go swimming, or he'd like to climb a tree. It makes it a lot shorter when we use those contractions. Now for the word would, we're taking out most of the letters here. We're taking out all of the letters except the letter D. So instead of W-O-U-L-D, we're taking out the W-O-U-L and we're replacing all of those letters with an apostrophe, and we're keeping the letter D. So she'd, he'd, they'd, I'd are your new words, right? It's much shorter than saying she would, or they would, or he would, or I would. So remember, contractions are taking two words, putting them together and making them into one shorter word. And we do that by replacing a bunch of letters with an apostrophe. So again, all of these are highlighted for you. They're bolded. So you can see a word over here in that blank space plus the letter would. And I show you on the end of that line how it's abbreviated or how it's shortened for each one of these if you go through them. The last thing we're going to talk about for our ELA notes today is figurative language, and we're going to be focusing on similes. Now, we've talked about these in the past, but we're going to review them because you see a lot of similes and metaphors show up in poetry because it's one of the ways that the poet or the author, right? A poet is an author for poems. It's the person that writes poetry. It's the way that a poet writes to help create more pictures in our head, to help us visualize or imagine what they're talking about. So they use things like similes and metaphors to compare things to help give us a really clear picture in our head of what they're talking about. Now, similes and metaphors both compare things that are not alike, but what you have to do is you have to be able to identify or to figure out what those two things that they're comparing are. Now, a simile specifically compares two unlike things, but it uses the word like or as in between them. So if you're looking before the word like or as and after the word like or as, you can find those two things that they're comparing with each other. And I'll give you lots of examples. So if I say, I ran as fast as a cheetah. So you see the word as in there. So I ran, so I'm comparing myself to what? I ran as fast as a what? As fast as a cheetah. So I'm comparing the cheetah right there to how fast I ran. So we're comparing the writer or the speaker in this sentence to a cheetah. If I say the boy is as quiet as a mouse, so here I'm comparing the boy, right? And I'm saying he's as quiet as what? As quiet as a mouse. So you can see before the as and after the as, when you're looking at those, it helps you figure out what are the two things that are being compared. You were as brave as a lion. So over here, I'm comparing you And I'm comparing your bravery, basically. I'm comparing it to a lion. If I say her hands were as cold as ice, so here I'm comparing her hands and I'm comparing them to ice. So you can see that the two things that we're comparing are usually on opposite sides of the sentence from each other. It's something important to think about, and something you're going to read about, or you're going to notice a lot when we get into our reading. So let's go ahead and start with our genre today. It's going to be poetry.
Genre, poetry. Essential question. What excites us about nature? Read how poems express what we love about the rain. April Rain Song by Langston Hughes. Let the rain kiss you. Let the rain beat upon your head with silver liquid drops. Let the rain sing you a lullaby. The rain makes still pools on the sidewalk. The rain makes running pools in the gutter. The rain plays a little sleep song on our roof at night. And I love the rain.
Okay, so one of the things I want you to pay attention to is the repetition that you're seeing in this poem. So repetition, remember, is when we're repeating words or phrases over and over and over again. So in the first stanza over here, you see this is this first group where it says, let the rain kiss you, let the rain beat upon your head with silver liquid drops, let the rain sing you a lullaby. And you see there's a space under there. So that's separating these stanzas. So in the first stanza, the repetition we're seeing is let the rain. So in each one of these lines of this first stanza, it says, let the rain, let the rain, let the rain. In the second stanza, it says, the rain, the rain, the rain. So the rain makes still pools in the sidewalk. The rain makes running pools in the gutter. The rain plays a little sleep song on our roof at night. And I love the rain. So that's where the emphasis, right? That's where the author wants you to focus your attention and to pay attention. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next rain poem.
Rain Poem by Elizabeth Coatsworth. The rain was like a little mouse, quiet, small, and gray. It pattered all around the house, and then it went away. It did not come, I understand, indoors at all until it found an open window and left tracks across the sill.
All right, let's take a look at the second poem. Now, this is a very sweet poem. It's comparing different things, and we see that there are similes in here. It says the rain was like a little mouse. So what was the rain like? We're comparing it to a little mouse. Quiet, small, and gray. It pattered all around the house, and then it went away. So we're seeing rhyme over here. So we have the word mouse and house rhyme. We have the word gray and away rhyme in this first stanza. So this first stanza, every other line rhymes, right? We're skipping one. So mouse and house rhyme, gray and away rhyme. The next stanza says, it did not come, I understand, indoors at all until it found an open window and left tracks across the sill. So understand and rhyme, until and sill also rhyme. So you're seeing that same alternating rhyming pattern, right? That switching. It's not the first one and the third one rhyme, the second one and the fourth one rhyme. So those are our two poems that are in here. Now, the next set of poems we're going to be reading, the first one is called Helicopters, and the second one is called Windy Tree.
Helicopters by Sylvia Cassidy. One day each spring, and I never know which day it will be, the tree outside my window fills with a wind all its own, swells like a giant silk parasol, lets fall a wondrous storm of helicopters, pale, pale green.
Okay, for this poem, we're talking about the poem is titled Helicopters, but if you're looking at the picture, you can see what the author means. You're seeing these leaves kind of falling. And when we read the poem, we see that the author is saying, the tree outside my window fills with a wind all its own, swells like a giant silk parasol, lets fall a wondrous storm of helicopters, pale, pale green. So over here, we're comparing what's falling from the tree, which are these little leaves, to helicopters, right? So we're seeing more similes there. We're also seeing the wind fills all its own and it swells like a giant silk parasol. So we're comparing the wind in the tree like a silk parasol. Let's take a look at our second poem on this page.
Windy Tree by Aileen Fisher. Think of the muscles a tall tree grows in its legs, in its foot, in its widespread toes, not to tip over and fall on its nose when a wild wind hustles and tussles and blows.
All right, for this poem, we're seeing a lot of rhyme that we didn't see in the first poem. The helicopters poem didn't have rhyme to it, but this one does. So if you're looking at your words, you have grows and toes and nose and blows. All of those rhyme with each other. Again, we're using a lot of comparing words as we go through these poems. So next we're going to take a look at our reading and writing workshop. Here's our vocabulary words and the poetry words that we talked about. You can go back to this in your book and go through it carefully. It's on pages 316 and 317. But let's get into our poems in this book.
Genre: poetry. Snow shape. Essential question: what excites us about nature? Read how poets describe things in nature.
Snow is falling from the sky. It gently lands on the ground. It's bright, bright white, just like cold milk. It looks so soft and smooth. I hate to ruin it with my feet, but I have got a plan. I stand up tall and close my eyes, and then straight back I fall. I slide my arms up and down. I move my legs in and out. I stand up to see what I have made, a 4-foot shape in the snow of me. By Dana Williams. Nature walk. When you take a walk in the fall, leaves are like a blanket on the ground. They crunch under your feet with each step you take. When you take a walk in the fall, the air feels as cool as drops of rain on your cheek. It smells like clean cotton towels. When you take a walk in the fall, the outdoors will excite you. It's a wonderful time. By Sarah Miller.
All right, for this poem, again, we're seeing a lot of those comparisons. We're seeing similes. So in the first stanza, it says, when you take a walk in the fall, leaves are like a blanket on the ground. So we're comparing the leaves to a blanket. And you're seeing that repetition. The beginning of each stanza, each group of lines says, when you take a walk in the fall. So you see that over and over and over again, because the writer, the poet, is drawing your attention to these important things that they notice when they're taking walks in the fall. Now, the second stanza says the air feels as cool as drops of rain on your cheeks. So we're comparing the air to cold raindrops. And in the third stanza, it's just describing what about the outdoors is going to be exciting for you and that you're going to have a wonderful time there.
In the sky. Outdoors on a clear day, look up in the sky. What do you see there? Look, I see a giant polar bear. Look, I see a pale flower growing. Look, I see a buffalo and her baby. Wait, it's changing. Now I see a cowboy on his horse, galloping, galloping across the sky. I wonder where he'll ride. By Juanita Marco.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start reading about free verse poems. And that's what a lot of the poems we've read so far, what category they fall into. Remember, we said a free verse poem doesn't need to rhyme, it doesn't need to follow a specific pattern.
Free verse. Free verse poetry tells a poet's thoughts or feelings, does not rhyme, can have similes. Find text evidence. I can tell that In the Sky is a free verse poem. It tells the author's thoughts and feelings about the clouds. It also does not rhyme. In the Sky. Outdoors on a clear day, look up in the sky. What do you see there? Look, I see a giant polar bear. Look, I see a pale flower growing. Look, I see a buffalo and her baby. Wait, it's changing. Now I see a cowboy on his horse, galloping, galloping across the sky. I wonder where he'll ride. By Juanita Marco. This is a free verse poem. The lines do not end with words that rhyme. Theme. The theme is the main message or lesson in a poem. Identifying key details in a poem can help you figure out the theme. Find text evidence. I'll reread Nature Walk and look for clues to figure out the theme of the poem. Graphic organizer. Clue. Leaves crunch under your feet. Clue. The temperature drops. Clue. Air smells like clean towels. Theme. There are a lot of exciting things to experience in nature in the fall. Repetition. Repetition is the use of repeated words and phrases. Poets use repetition to make a poem sound like a song or to stress the poem's meaning. Find text evidence. When I read In the Sky aloud, I can hear repetition. Reread the poem and listen for words that are repeated. Outdoors on a clear day, look up in the sky. What do you see there? Look, I see a giant polar bear. Look, I see a pale flower growing. Look, I see a buffalo and her baby. Wait, it's changing. Now I see a cowboy on his horse, galloping, galloping across the sky. I wonder where he'll ride. The poet repeats the word look. It is followed by an exclamation mark. The repetition of this exclamation shows the excitement of finding shapes in the clouds.
All right, the last thing we're going to go over one more time is similes, just to remind you what they are. Remember, similes are comparing two different things that use the word like or as.
Similes. A simile compares two different things using the words like or as. Find text evidence. To find a simile, I need to look for a comparison of two unlike things. In Nature Walk, the speaker compares leaves to a blanket on the ground. Nature Walk. When you take a walk in the fall, leaves are like a blanket on the ground.
All right, that takes us to the end of our notes. If you guys have any questions, definitely let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have an amazing day. Take care.